Filling in for Mrs. Bittle tonight is her husband, Gary Bittle. And Gary, you were a former Oak Hill commissioner, city commissioner back in what, 2000? And you were involved in community works. And what are some of the things you're involved in?
Along with Kathy, I was a volunteer firefighter for Oak Hill for 21 years. With Oak Hill Community Trust for
Things like the River Fest.
10 years, the River Fest, Christmas
Okay.
Parade. I'm involved with the school here in Oak Hill.
What are some of the community or civic or charitable works that Commissioner Bittle was involved in?
Well, as I previously stated, she was a firefighter, volunteer with the county. Here in Station 22 in Oak Hill, rose to the rank of lieutenant. She also had wildland firefighter experience working for the Wildlife Refuge down at the Cape. She's helped organize the Christmas parade. This will be our 26th year coming up. We have, particularly she's organized the drives for the food and toys for the kids at Christmas time for over 20 years here at Oak Hill. She's been involved in different things with the school. She works with the school and always involved in something.
Now, you and Kathy, you have what, 3 children?
Three children, 18-year-old son, and 13, 11-year-old daughters.
And they've all gone through what was the former Oak Hill
W.F.
Elementary?
Burns, all 3 of them went through, and
then
we currently have our 2 daughters at Burnside Tech now.
And are you involved in that school at all?
Yes, I'm the board president there.
And what about Commissioner Bittle?
She runs the after-school program.
Why, I'm sure you've had pillow talk about politics. Why is Commissioner Bittle going for a, what, 3rd term?
3rd term.
3rd 4-year term? What's her number 1 priority that you know of?
Number 1 priority is looking for growth within the city. Controlled growth, responsible growth. She would like to see sewer and water along US 1 being growth into the city for industrial or tax dollars through businesses, I should say, that would help the city prosper more. Back in the decades ago, 50s, 60s, and 70s, were all types of businesses up and down US 1 in Oak Hill. Auto body shops, there were hair salons, there was convenience stores owned by people that lived here in Oak Hill. Kathy was born and raised here in Oak Hill, still lives in Oak Hill, never left.
Was she born in Birdfish?
Yes.
Okay.
Her family was one of the first families to settle in this area. Halland and Robinson. The Robinson family made a living doing commercial fishing. Her father was a commercial fisherman. Her mother worked out at the school. So her heart's here. And she would love to see the city prosper more. It's been a tough going through the economy, the way it's been for the last few years. But it looks like we're starting to come out of that. And she'd like to transform that into what could be done here in the city to make it better.
I know a gentleman asked me earlier about, he was concerned about what to do about taxes, and I'll let him deal with that when we get to the citizen part of it. But he touched a little bit on the water and sewer, which is very, very expensive, as you know.
Yes.
Is that cost prohibitive for Oak Hill to do on its own, realistically?
Well,
From her perspective.
For her perspective, we have the opportunity to be looked in. They hired a planning company called Planning Solutions. They're now the city planners for Oak Hill. They do a lot of grant work. They will be looking into possible CRA dollars that could be used along US 1 as the first CRA district in this area to get water and sewer along US 1, get businesses in here, and then branch to other areas in the city. If the commission's able to do that, the city's able to do that, they'll be able to keep bringing tax dollars in through businesses, be able to keep tax dollars lower for citizens, and be able to provide water and sewer at hopefully a cheaper fee.
Well, I don't want to get into it beyond that, but I know we'll talk about it when we get to the county council race tonight, but One of the things about CRAs or community redevelopment agencies that people may not realize is normally property taxes would go to the county to be dispersed, throughout for unincorporated areas and then for things like Botran bus services and some shared services, dispatch, regional dispatch and fire services and things like that. Does Oak Hill realistically have enough of a tax base that you could take a portion of this, put it to the county and come back and make a difference over 10 or 20 years with 1,790 people? Well, we'll get to that.
If we don't look into it, it's never going to happen.
Okay. Well, I'm not saying not look into it, I'm saying realistically.
Oh, absolutely.
Is it a pipe dream or is it something that's doable from her perspective?
I think from her perspective, it is definitely something that's doable. It's not something that's going to happen overnight, and it's something that's going to take cooperation, working with the county and everything. As I mentioned, the city planners will be looking at other grant opportunities for the city to hopefully tie in with that. New Smyrna Beach, for example, has multiple CRA areas. Yes, they have a higher tax base than the city of Oak Hill does, but the opportunity didn't present itself in earlier years. So if it's never looked into and never attempted, it's never going to happen at all. You can sit back and just go with the flow
I
now.
want to move because we're running out of time. We got like 2 minutes left before I turn it to the audience, and I know we have at least one question. One of the hold on, let me just finish, please, and then we'll get right to you. One of the things I know that Commissioner Bittle found herself caught up in, as everybody did in Oak Hill, and us in media and citizens, and in every small town, you love your police and your fire department. There was a lot of acrimony with, what do? It's broken. There were people that supported the chief that was there, and then there were people who were saying, well, we don't have enough money to bring in, law enforcement that has experience without getting people that come from other agencies, and it becomes a lawsuit nightmare. I spoke to the mayor and some other officials, and Sheriff Ben Johnson, he does a great job. He's clearly the top law enforcement official in Volusia County, but 14 or 15,000 last fiscal year. They're projecting 13 or 14, somewhere in that area. Mr. Mayor, for clarification purposes, what would be the total estimated for this fiscal year for law enforcement services? 55,000. Right, but I mean, what was the increase?
13,000.
Okay. So 15 the previous year, and 13. That's a big chunk in 2 years. Does she regret maybe? I know she was supportive of trying to keep the police department, but I think everybody said that after the sheriff came in, there seemed to be this pleasantry. How long do you think you can sustain? How long does she think? Excuse me. Has she discussed anything about sustaining, or maybe, I guess, starting up a new police department is very cost prohibitive?
Well, when we had the police department, she wanted to keep the police department, not because of the people that were in the department, but because in a small town such as this, losing your police department, you kind of lose your identity also. There was something that you could say was Oak Hills, and that was the police department. There were a lot of problems that, unbeknownst to most of the commissioners here at the time, wasn't anything that was known. Once things became known, it was a pretty simple choice of what needed to be done. The city couldn't dissolve a police department, rent the sheriff's department for a few months while you tried to find some other individuals to take their spots. So the sheriff's department was the natural selection, and she hasn't had any bad feedback from citizens or anybody about the sheriff's department. She's completely happy with the sheriff's department. And I think what led to a lot of that last year, or at the time, was also people that lived in Oak Hill have been here for decades.
2 summers ago.
Right, but decades know that the sheriff's department ran law enforcement in Oak Hill in the past. There were issues in the past with the sheriff's department due to the amount of manpower, et cetera. And that was some concern with citizens that she had spoke with also. So.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you answering those questions frankly and honestly. We want to make it clear from Commissioner Bittle's point of view, because she couldn't be here because of a health issue that came up that was beyond her control. Her candidate, challenger, he chose not to attend, and he said he had another commitment, and I offered him the opportunity to come back for our second night, to give him an opportunity like
Absolutely.
Commissioner Bill has. Now, is there anybody in the audience? I know, if you could please identify yourself by name. Well, I think it's an important question you had.